Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be taking a look at another rogue deck from the 2004 format, and that is going to be Gorebyss-Beedrill. Now, I would absolutely love to say that I came up with this rogue deck, but I didn't. Leading up to that 2004 box tournament, I had different people that would message me asking me for just maybe my thoughts on a deck, or they wanted to show me a cool idea they had. And two people that ended up sending me a message was Danial Altavilla and OmniPoke. And they both said, "Hey, I think we got this really cool rogue deck," and showed me their each individual list for it. I don't know if they worked together on it or if they both just came up with this concept on their own, but both of these players had it. Their lists were very, very teched out. And obviously, if somebody messages me a deck and says, "Hey, this is what I want to show you this. I think this is a cool idea, or this is a rogue concept I have," I'm not gonna turn around and instantly make it into a video. But neither one of them ended up being able to play in that 2004 tournament. But after the event, Danial Altavilla on his Twitter ended up posting that he had some real world stuff going on, wasn't able to play, but he was going to play Gorebyss-Beedrill. So at that point, he posted the deck. I felt like it was pretty fair game to make a video on it at that point. And my list is vastly different than what the list I saw was. So basically, the deck and the concept are pretty straightforward here. Your main attacker is going to be Gorebyss in most situations, and then you're going to have Beedrill as a secondary attacker, being able to use that Venom Spray, and in certain matchups that Needle Rush if we need to get some additional damage on the board. Now, I'm going to say this is not some crazy ingenious deck building that I went through for this. I essentially took the very basic Gorebyss Crobat deck and swapped out the Crobat for the Beedrill. I did a little bit more than that, but the same basic skeleton of the deck is exactly the same, and I would say the deck plays very differently, but it has a lot of overlap between the Gorebyss Crobat deck. Now, the other thing I do want to add before we start jumping in and talking about cards here is essentially this Gorebyss plus partner deck, and we've referenced this on the channel quite a few times, but I really do think you could take the same basic deck engine, take your 4/4 Gorebyss, and then add in some sort of insert, stage 2 attacker here, or insert secondary attacker, whether that is like your basic stage 1s like Lantern and Banette, we've done that. Your insert generic stage 2 here like Crobat, we've done that. I think there's a lot of different things you can do with this sort of setup, and I think Beedrill is just another really ingenious way that you can play that Gorebyss plus partner strategy. Now, jumping in, talking about individual cards here, we play the 4 Dunsparce. Of course, like almost every single deck in 2004, we play the 4 Dunsparce. I am going to say, though, that in any sort of deck, we're not playing that Delcatty Magneton consistency engine. Being able to open Dunsparce, get the Striker Run off, thinning your deck by 5 cards is really, really, really huge. That's going to make things a lot easier for you later on in the game. We do go for Clamperl, for Gorebyss, absolutely standard here. The one thing I am going to note about this deck is Gorebyss is, Gorebyss is going to be your main attacker in the deck, is your main damage output that the deck has. Now, Beedrill, while having a really strong power, it is not good, solid, consistent damage. Now, I'm going to argue to a certain extent neither is Crobat, but Beedrill in particular just does not have that really strong, sustained damage. So you are going to find in certain games where if your opponent is able to power through 4 Gorebyss, or if you get very unlucky and you prize 2 Gorebyss or 2 Clamperl, those can be some very rough games, some very rough situations. It's nothing I'm going to say necessarily bad, but you are just going to have to be aware that is a weakness of the deck and then try to plan your game plan accordingly. Now, we opt to play a 4-3-3 Beedrill line. Now, I'm going to say that in a lot of the Crobat decks, you're going to see like a 3-2-3, and then you play Rare Candy. Obviously, you can play Rare Candy with Beedrill, but it is pretty counterintuitive to the strategy of picking up Beedrill with Mr. Briny's Compassion. So I went with, I originally had a 3-3-3 line in here. I had 1 extra spot, and then just playing that Weedle, that extra Weedle, does a couple of different things. 1, essentially it helps us with our prizes largely. And 2, we need to have an additional Weedle in play So if we have like a Kakuna active, we evolve into Beedrill, and then we go Brinies, we want another Weedle on the bench that we're instantly going to evolve into Kakuna that turn as well. If we don't have that Weedle in play already and we have to bench a Weedle and then wait a turn to evolve it, that's just going to put us a turn behind. So we really, really do want to have that Weedle in play already, and playing that fourth copy is going to help with that. Kakuna, just our stage 1. I am going to say, though, it's actually a pretty solid attack. We can use that with multi or double colorless energy. Just put the defending poison the defending Pokemon, and then any damage done to Kakuna is reduced by 10. It's going to be a stage 1 that's probably going to be able to take a hit. Beedrill, 100% in there for the power. I do want to note that free retreat cost is really strong. And then Needle Rush, it's not the ideal attack. I don't like flipping coins, but in a pinch, it's going to be able to get the job done for us. I do want to note also, one of Beedrill's biggest weaknesses is you basically just take that auto loss to Blaziken, and playing this Gorebyss-Beedrill combination deck is going to be a much stronger Blaziken matchup. You're not going to take that auto loss. In fact, you're probably going to have a favorable matchup. Now, jumping into the supporters here, I'm going to go with just the draw supporters here at the start. We play the 4 Copycat, 4 Stevens, 4 Underground. In my opinion, these are absolutely key supporters. You've got to play those 12. Then I do play 2 TV Reporter. The one thing that I don't have in the deck is I don't have a Desert Shaman. I think the deck could very easily incorporate 1 Desert Shaman, maybe even 2 Desert Shamans, to essentially use that Beedrill, do that Venom Spray, and then try to put your opponent off that switch or warp point if you think they have it in your hand. This is one of the few variations of Gorebyss where I actually think Desert Shaman is going to be a lot stronger in. Something like Crobat, Gorebyss Crobat, for example, it's much harder to put your opponent off the hand and much easier to find yourself in a bad situation or off of a not drawing a good Desert Shaman hand yourself. Or at least in this, I feel like there's a little bit more incentive than I'm just going to try to put my opponent off of a hand. You do have that added incentive of trying to put them off precisely a switch or a warp point, and then the added benefit of them staying paralyzed and poisoned in those situations. Now, we do play 4 Mr. Briny's Compassion. One thing you've noticed with a lot of Crobat Gorebyss decks is they play like 3 Warp Point. So automatically it's very easy for us to switch that Warp Point to Mr. Briny's Compassion. And that's just 3 for 3 right there. And then not playing that Rare Candy frees up a few other spots, so I do have the 4th Mr. Briny's Compassion in there. I do think if we're going to make some arguments here, I do think either the Weedle spot or the Mr. Briny's Compassion spot, you could argue or debate cutting one of those for a Desert Shaman. Same with the TV Reporter spots. I also think that you can make an argument to play Claw Fossil in this deck as well. The main thought on the Claw Fossil is essentially what do most decks play to switch, and that's going to be Warp Point. So if you go, let's say you use Venom Spray, you have Gorebyss, you hit them, they go Warp Point. Instead of giving up a prize on the bench, you can just give up a Claw Fossil. I haven't found that to be useful enough in games to actually warrant playing it, but it is something that I've been considering. Now, the other thing I want to note about Mr. Briny's Compassion is it's incredibly strong picking up Beedrill, recycling those Beedrills, but you're also going to find situations where it can be very good at picking up a Gorebyss. If a Gorebyss has some damage on it, you're worried about an ATM Rock, just pick the Gorebyss up. Special condition, pick the Gorebyss up. Even though Mr. Briny's Compassion is a supporter, it is a little bit slower than, say, a Warp Point. It does have a lot more utility for the deck than, say, a Warp Point would in this sort of deck. For Master Ball, in any sort of this fast, aggressive deck, I like to max my consistency. That's a very straightforward supporter lineup, maxing those Master Balls. Especially in a deck like this, all of our Pokemon have very low HP. The highest is going to be Beedrill at 80 HP. This is not a deck that can go down 4 prizes and then come back. You want to be aggressive from the start of the game and just plow through your opponent, and you want those really consistent good starts to make that happen. 2 Desert Ruins, this does a couple of different things. One is it's going to counter Island Cave, which does see some play in some different decks. You don't want to take a loss just because your opponent is able to play a single Island Cave down. And then the other thing that Desert Ruins does is it does help us get those chip damage in against large EXs. You would think decks like Gorebyss will just run through large EX decks, but in fact, if a large EX deck can really get rolling and they've got that Blossom and Pokemon Nurse at their disposal and they can start going through multiple Gorebysses, it doesn't take much for you to find yourself in a really rough spot really quickly. That Desert Ruin is going to get us some much needed chip damage down, counter that Island Cave, and especially if we're able to get a Beedrill off, that's going to be even more chip damage. That Desert Ruin's just going to start adding up even faster. Energy lineup, really straightforward, consistent energy lineup. 4 double rainbow, 4 multi, 6 psychic energies. I say it every video I play a 4 multi in. Just make sure that you don't attach another special energy, including another multi, to a Pokemon that already has a multi in it. It's just going to turn it into a colorless energy. That is something you need to be very careful of playing this deck. However, I'm going to say I have been playing some games with this. I'm currently working on a Jay Plays video for this deck. I'm getting very good results with this in the 2004 format. Not only is the deck really fun to play, it's very annoying to play against thanks to Beedrill, and it seems to do well against a majority of the meta. I haven't really found any, I'm going to say, auto losses to it, or anything that just rolls over it, or even necessarily any really bad matchups. I'm going to say you go pretty close to 50-50 with most other Gorebyss decks in the format. Most of these slower stage 2 decks are going to be favorable, but it's another way to play Gorebyss, and I think if you haven't given it a try, I would definitely give it a try, and don't be surprised if you see it in an upcoming tournament. So I'm going to cut the video off there. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a look at a good rogue deck, and I'll catch you in the next video.